When Yah does what Yah does, when he acts in his sovereign authority, when he demonstrates his capability in the earth, is there ever a limit if he exceeds that we can say, whoa, 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 I think you've just gone too far? Really? Hi, this is Barry Phillips with 10-Minute Torah, Day 2 of special feast days readings pertaining to Pesach or Passover, and Chag Matzot or the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Today we're in Shemot or Exodus chapter number 13 and verse 3. It reads, "And Moshe said to the people, remember this day in which we went out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery." And then this phrase says, "For by the strength of hand Yahweh brought us out of this place, and whatever is leavened shall not be eaten." More on that last phrase in a few moments. Verse 14, "And it shall be when your son asks you in time to come, saying, What is this? Then you shall say to him, By strength of hand Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage." So Yah is indicating through the writing of Moshe here that he did not just casually demonstrate a flicking of the finger or a waving of the hand. He summons his power, and with strength of his hand, he brought about the deliverance of Israel from their slavery in Egypt, in Mitzrayim. Casually reading through the scriptures about creation and other texts beyond chapter 1, Bereshit or Genesis, you will find an idea that Yah flung his hand and put all the planets and celestial bodies in their place, and they are perfectly aligned to the nth degree. But he did it with a wave of his hand. With the blast of his nostrils, he split the Red Sea, and Israel walked across on dry ground. It's perhaps as much as he sneezed, he blasted his nostrils, and the waters parted, miraculously so. And of course, these are euphemisms and just character portrayals, if you will. Yah has to summon his power, because if it was in full display all the time, we would cease to exist. Let's just be honest about that. But he says in the book of Ephesians, chapter number 1, pertaining to Yeshua being raised from the dead, verse 19 says, "What is the exceeding greatness of his power toward us who are believing, according to the mighty working of his mighty power, which he wrought in the Messiah when he raised him from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenlies." When Yah raised Yeshua from the dead, conquering death was not a hard task. Death is not a formidable foe for Yah, but rather he exerted enormous strength and capability, because we live in resurrection power. And this is no minor degree of authority or power or capability, but an extreme ability. We just don't know how we are to tap into it. At least we're not demonstrating that we know how to tap into it. So let's get back to this demonstration of his hand. When there are rulers among us that exercise authority, we in democratic style government nations, we tend to put checks and balances in the way so that no one part of the government can run roughshod over the people and not over one another. Here in America, we have that same understanding. We have the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch. So it's the presidency, the Congress, and the Supreme Court. They're supposed to be in balance, all being in balance of one another. When one acts in a powerful way, demonstrating the authority that they believe is legally theirs to act upon, it's trendy in these days to say, you're being a dictator. You're being Adolf Hitler. And it's not just against our nation, but it rises in other nations as well. The idea that one individual can overstep their bounds and we have the right privilege and ability to call them out on it sometimes crosses over into the boundary to where we see how Yah is acting and we feel that we also have such privilege and right to say, you're doing too much, Father. When you invite Yah through prayer to act in your behalf and to do what it is that needs to be done, we will often pray, your will be done. And yet when Yah acts according to his will, human beings tend to get upset and say, you've gone too far. Later on in the wilderness, even Israel was saying, maybe Yah, our creator, our covenant giver, went too far. We should never have been out here to begin with. He should have left us in Mitzrayim, so we're going back. He says here that he led them out by the strength of his hand. Make no mistake about it, Yah has strength in his hand, and when we cry out to him, he is ready, more than willing, to demonstrate the strength that is in his hand. And if Yah offends you by his supreme authority, his sovereign acts, the way that he moves and behalf even our prayers and requests. I had no idea you were going to do this. I didn't know that my prayer would mean this situation. Well, it did. You asked him to move according to his will, and this is the result. When Yah sets about to do his will, man is going to get upset. Mankind will have problems, and oftentimes the very people asking for his power are going to wring their hands and wonder, now how am I going to handle this? It's not for us to handle. When Yah takes over and does what he's doing, he means to set things right, and he means to establish his kingdom and to bring honor and glory to his name, to reveal his Messiah to us, and to not only bring fear into our adversaries and cause them to bow down and acknowledge who he is as king of this universe, he also is looking for his people to acknowledge him and to understand his power and his authority. Now back in verse 3, it says, in addition to the act of the strength of his hand, and whatever is leavened shall not be eaten. What is the connection here? And as I read that, I began to contemplate, this doesn't make sense. What does leaven have to do with the strength of his hand? Well, two factors here. Number one, historically, as we're told in the Passover Seder, the people of Israel left in such hurry. The demonstration of Yah's hand was so absolute and so divisive between Israel and Mitzrayim that the people left in quick fashion, not having time to allow their bread to rise. So they left and ate unleavened bread. The unleavened bread then reinforces the idea that when Yah acts, things are going to change, and your bread may not have time to rise. So as we eat the unleavened bread, we are being reminded, I prayed, and when he answers my prayer, I may have to move, and move suddenly. But leaven also is a type and shadow of sin. And so as we get rid of the leaven, and should have gotten rid of the leaven by this point out of our homes and dwellings, as we have done that, we are demonstrating, as we eat the unleavened bread, I recognize that not only will you act in my behalf, but you will act upon me if I continue condoning and conditioning myself to accept sin. So while we eat the unleavened bread this week, let's keep those two things freshly in our minds. And I hope to see you again tomorrow. To then, shalom.